everybody, and welcome to DC Fine Art. Today we are working on an acrylic painting that I just decided to do. It's a really small 8x10. So working with like really big big details or being very detailed, really wasn't too much in this one. I was just having fun. It's, like I said, an 8x10 canvas. I am using an airbrush right now just to kind of go over it and add some colors to it. With my airbrush, just to speed up the time, and just I wanted to get that really light color. Now the airbrush colors, if you guys do have airbrush, I do use the goldens, and I was using a little bit of the indigo, the Sicilian or whatever it is, blue hue, and the white. So those were the main colors that I used and just kind of mixed them up. And then I also used the airbrush flow improver that I like to use. So here's just me going over it with an airbrush first. And as you can see, I'm kind of working it back and forth, and of course I'm going a lot slower than what I'm going right now in the picture. But I just wanted to get that snowy, ice cold, like just out in the snow kind of look. And so I turned my picture sideways because it was drying on the bottom, so that's the reason why it was that way, but this is the way it'll be going. So after I got that snow kind of look, or at least that light blue and some dark blues in there, that's whenever I picked up the brush and started working on it. And here is his eye. And I did this in black with a little bit of blue in it, and it's the Persian blue. So on the blues, I basically used the Persian blue and used the light blue violet out of Liquitex Basics. And then of course, you know, I mixed it with white or adjusted it as needed. But yeah, I used on the eyes was probably most of the color that I used, which was the raw sienna. I used a little bit of raw umber, and then I used the unbleached titanium in the Liquitex Basics just to get like the eyes. And really that was the only colors, like the browns and then the blacks, you know, that I used. Other than that, whenever I'm doing this fox, I'm just sticking with like the Persian blue, the light blue violet, and the white. If I needed to and I wanted a little bit more of a grayish tone in there, I have thrown in just a little, like a little speck of black, and mixed it in with some of it, but it was very, very minute. I had to be very, very careful with that. But here I'm just kind of marking in some of the darker areas first, or at least some of the shadows and stuff like that. I didn't really want to go too much where the light is with the darker blues. But and I kind of got a mid-tone that I went over the rest of his body with. And I didn't go straight white right in. Everything that I've been mixing has a little bit of that light blue violet, and then I mix it with some white, so that way it makes it lighter. But I leave the brightest part for last. And now everything that I'm doing here is just layering after layering and adjusting as I go. So the one thing you want to always remember is when you're working with painting, you know, you're just adjusting at all times. You're going over it repeatedly, over and over and over again, until you know it looks good, or until you're happy with it and it looks good. So just because it gets to this point, you're like, well, I don't know, he looks okay, but maybe he's not good enough, you know, and just stop. Don't stop. Just keep going and working with it little by little, and it just keeps getting better the more you work on it. So here I'm going over the edge, and see how his tail kind of goes off the canvas. I take the other side and I actually continue that on over onto the other side. And that way, if you hang him up on a wall and you just want to hang up the canvas just as it is, you can, and it still looks good because the painting wraps around it. Now this may look like a white, but it really isn't a white. It's still got the light blue violet. It's just I added a little bit more white to it, but it's not straight white. Here I'm just kind of going in the direction of the fur where I see in the reference photo. And the reference photo for this is on Pixabay, so that is where I got him. And this was just a quick, like, just one day, just get her done kind of thing. It was really, really quick, so I didn't really spend too much time with it. I just wanted to have some fun and wanted to paint before I had to go on my travels again, so I went ahead and picked up my brush and wanted to do this one. Otherwise, it's really hard to bring all my paints with me. So here I am, still kind of going over it, like I said, back and forth, little by little. I'll adjust his mouth. Maybe I'll make his mouth a little bit darker, make it a little bit, you know, maybe kind of see a little bit of how it goes around, but then I'm going to adjust it even more. So you just kind of adjust it, you look at your reference photo, and you just keep going with it. Here I'm kind of making that black around his eyes, and it was actually black fur that's around his eyes. He's a little Arctic fox, and so I had to thicken that up just a little bit more around there. I know it's so small, but putting in just a little bit of highlight on his nose. When working with something that's this small, you know, to try and get in a lot of details, I mean, it can be a little bit of a challenge, but yeah, I didn't want to go too detailed with them because my time was very short, I guess, before I had to leave. So it was definitely a fun, quick one, especially whenever I stuck with everything being just like this blue, like an ice cold blue. I know the weather over here in the States has been crazy, crazy, crazy. We've had super cold temperatures, and you know, water was freezing up. Luckily, even though my water froze up, I still had jugs of my waters for my distilled water, so that way I could still do my paintings. So I did have my art water that I didn't want to give up. Yeah, it's definitely been frosty. So with the cold and everything else that's been going on, I just felt like I wanted to do an Arctic fox. And see, I kind of go back and forth, you know, I add in my lights here and there, but then I may want to go back in and add some of the darks and kind of adjust things and maybe make a leg a little bit thinner, or maybe it's too wide, or, you know, I just go back and forth with it until I get it right. But you definitely want to have like a little bit darker of a shade underneath while you're doing your highlights on top. It definitely stands out and it just adds depth to it. But on occasion, I have gone in and added some darks back in there too. And then I'll end up putting some lights over the top of it. Adjusting those eyes. And see, I was using like a really small brush, a little round brush. And I ended up changing that out because I was wanting to do more of his little fur. And I ended up getting a rake brush. And you see this flat? It's a flat, but it's like a rake brush. So it's got the little points that kind of stick out further than the brush itself. It's really kind of cool. I think I got these from Hobby Lobby in like a set. And it makes it super nice and easy to be able to add all different types of fur. So I use it at an angle. I don't just use it to just straight flat. I mean, I have done that with like little edges, maybe kind of dot them in. But I didn't want it to all stand out as being like just the same repeated pattern. So I would go in and actually just kind of strike it like down sideways, like the thin side, and just kind of strike it down. And it made these really nice thin lines. So it was really nice adding the fur with this rake brush. I kind of wish I had a smaller one. I think I do, but I am not for sure. I didn't really see it. I had this chunky, or at least a thicker, bigger flat, but I wish it was smaller because I was working with such a small little picture. Adding in some more highlights. And see, it's just a layering process of just going over over some of the darks and just layering and layering until it looks good. Taking it around the edge there. But it's just a fun, simple little painting just to do, and just sticking with blues. I mean, basically you use lighter blues and you use your darker blues, but you don't want to go too dark unless you're going with his, like, his little ears right there. But other than that, it was really a lot of fun to be able to do something that looked icy and cold, and I guess kind of how I was feeling. I made sure though to spray the canvas whenever you're working on it. Just use like a light mister, so that way it's a lot easier to add some of those fur lines too. Because if you don't spray the canvas, you can end up with like a dry brush. So you want to make sure you have enough water on your brush mixed in with your paint, and then you also want to make sure that your canvas is slightly damp. Not dripping wet, but just slightly wet, so that way it's a lot easier to be able to make those little fur marks and have it a clean stroke than having it kind of make like a dry brush look. So after making a little bit of a detail of his little paws, then I went in and just kind of darkened underneath for a shadow. I'll end up going in through there, kind of making a shadow around him where he's kind of sitting in this fluffy snow. And that will pretty much be the end of this one. I know it's a super short one. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like and subscribe. Love to have you guys on my channel. And until next time, I guess, well, also in the description below, I do have listed my Facebook artist community and my website, and along with Fine Art America, where you can find my prints. And I guess I'll see you all next week. Bye, you guys.